Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at something pretty interesting. The connection between parents' health and autism risk
Yeah.
in their kids.
Oh, yeah.
We've got a really cool mix of research to dig into, including a brand new meta-analysis
Mm.
from the University of South Australia,
Okay.
and then a couple of older studies from the journal Pediatrics.
Interesting.
So get ready for some aha moments. This is a deep dive you won't want to miss.
I'm excited. You know what's really interesting to me is that we focused so much on the mother's health during pregnancy for so long.
Yeah.
But this research is really pushing us to think beyond those 9 months.
Okay.
So not just mom's health during pregnancy, but both parents' health, even before conception.
So preconception health is a bigger deal than we all thought, huh?
It seems like it. Yeah.
All right, well, let's start with this massive meta-analysis from UNISA.
Okay.
They analyzed data from over 3.6 million mother-child pairs across 42 studies.
Wow.
That's huge.
It is.
So it gives a lot of weight to their findings.
Absolutely. And they found some pretty significant stuff. Children born to mothers with obesity during pregnancy had a 32% higher risk of developing ADHD.
Wow.
Even more striking, their risk of autism more than doubled, and there was a 16% increase in the risk of conduct disorders.
That's a pretty big jump, isn't
It
it?
is. It's concerning, for sure.
So, but the study also found that it's not just obesity during pregnancy that matters.
Right.
Obesity before pregnancy was linked to these increased risks as well.
Uh-huh.
A 30% higher risk of what they call externalizing symptoms
Okay.
and problems with peer relationships.
Yeah.
This next study from 2014 really threw me for a loop. It was titled Parental Obesity and Risk of Autism Spectrum Disorder. And I went into it kind of expecting to see maternal obesity as the main culprit. But the results weren't what I expected at all.
Oh, interesting. What happened?
Well, I'll let you explain. This study was unique in how it looked at BMI, right?
Yes. This study looked at the BMI of both mothers and fathers, which is great because that allowed the researchers to start to differentiate potential genetic influences from environmental ones.
Oh.
So by including fathers in the analysis, they were able to sort of tease that apart a little bit.
Interesting. So what did they find? Did dad's weight make a difference?
The strongest association that they found was with paternal obesity, not maternal.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And this was particularly true for autistic disorder and Asperger's disorder.
So the father's weight is linked to autism.
That's what this study found.
Yeah, that's wild. So how do we even explain that?
Well, one possibility is something called pleiotropic gene variance.
Pleiotropic gene variants.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know how a light switch can control multiple lamps in different rooms?
Uh-huh.
So similarly, one gene can influence multiple seemingly unrelated traits, like obesity in the father and autism risk in the child.
So we're saying that dad's genes, which are potentially influenced by his weight, have a downstream effect on baby's brain development.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay, so what's another possibility?
Another possibility is epigenetic alterations.
Okay.
These are changes in how genes are expressed, and they can be influenced by environmental factors like obesity. So a father's obesity might be causing these epigenetic changes in his sperm that then impact the neurodevelopment of his offspring.
So it's like the environment is actually changing how the genes are working.
Exactly. Which is incredible when you think about it.
That's wild. It seems like we're only just now starting to really understand these really complex interactions between genetics, environment, and development.
We are. It's definitely an area that needs a lot more research.
So much more to learn.
If we can really unravel these genetic and epigenetic mechanisms, it could lead to a whole new way of thinking about autism risk factors and preventative measures.
That would be huge. Okay, well, let's add another layer to this already complex picture. We have a 2016 study, also from Pediatrics. It's titled The Association of Maternal Obesity and Diabetes with Autism and Other Developmental Disabilities. This one takes it a step further by looking at the combined effects of maternal obesity and diabetes. So this study was particularly interesting because it specifically looked at the interplay between these two common maternal health conditions and their impact on both autism and intellectual disability.
Right.
So did they find that having both conditions amplified the risk?
They did. The study found a slight association with autism when either obesity or diabetes was present alone, but the risk significantly increased when both conditions were present.
So if you have both, it's much worse.
It seems that way, yeah.
So this synergistic effect between obesity and diabetes,
Yeah.
that's concerning. What does it tell us about the developing brain?
It seems like the combined impact is greater than the sum of its parts. So maybe the developing brain is particularly vulnerable to disruptions when it's exposed to multiple stressors.
Like being hit from multiple sides.
Yeah, like maternal obesity and diabetes at the same time.
Multiple hits.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, this is pretty heavy stuff, but it's important to understand.
It is.
So what are some of the potential biological reasons for these connections that we're seeing between maternal health and neurodevelopmental outcomes in kids?
One of the key things that researchers talk about again and again is inflammation.
Inflammation.
Yeah.
Huh.
Both obesity and diabetes are known to increase inflammation throughout the body, and it's possible that that inflammation could be impacting fetal brain development.
So inflammation, which we usually think about with like injuries and infections, could actually mess with brain development in the womb.
That's right. Another mechanism that's been proposed is hyperglycemia and hypoxia, which are often seen in mothers with diabetes.
Huh.
Hyperglycemia, which is high blood sugar, can lead to fetal hyperglycemia, and that can increase the fetus's need for oxygen, potentially leading to hypoxia, which is not enough oxygen. Both of these states can have detrimental effects on brain development.
So it sounds like if mom's blood sugar is all over the place, it can create a bunch of problems for the developing baby, possibly impacting their brain development.
Exactly.
And then what about that multiple hits hypothesis we talked about earlier?
Right. Co-occurring obesity and diabetes, that could represent multiple hits or stressors on the developing brain, making it even more susceptible to those potential disruptions.
Like a 1-2 punch.
Exactly.
So we're starting to get a sense of the biological pathways involved. But what does all of this mean in the bigger picture? Like, why should anyone listening care about these findings?
Well, think about the global trends that we're seeing. Obesity and diabetes rates are on the rise worldwide.
Yeah, that's true.
So if these conditions really do contribute to an increased risk of neurodevelopmental disorders, the public health implications are enormous.
It's a little scary when you think about it that way.
Yeah, it is a bit. But you know what they say, knowledge is power. Understanding these connections is the first step towards actually doing something about it.
Okay, so we've covered maternal obesity, diabetes, paternal influences, potential biological mechanisms. It's clear this is a complicated issue with many layers.
It really is. And it really highlights the need for more research to truly understand all of the factors involved.
We'll be right back to continue our deep dive into this very important topic.
You know, all of this really underscores the importance of preconception and prenatal care.
Yeah.
It's not just about those 9 months. It's about creating the best environment for a healthy baby right from the start.
It's like we need a shift in how we think about this. It's not just pregnancy. It's like this holistic view of parental health.
Yeah. Especially if you're planning to start a family.
Right. Planning.
It really brings up the question, what can we do about all of this? What are the public health implications? Yeah.
Exactly. We've talked about the problem. Now, what are the solutions?
Right.
I mean, should we be putting more resources into maternal health interventions and education?
Absolutely. We need to give people the knowledge and the resources to make good decisions about their health before and during pregnancy.
Okay.
So things like nutritional counseling and making sure that people understand how important it is to manage any pre-existing conditions like diabetes.
So it's about giving people the tools to understand how things, like their food choices and managing existing conditions, can impact not just them, but potentially their kids, too.
Exactly.
Really interesting. What about physical activity? I feel like that gets lost sometimes.
That's a great point. We have to think beyond just individual choices, too.
Okay.
There are all sorts of things that contribute to obesity and diabetes, like whether people have access to healthy food or safe places to exercise.
Right.
Even things like having access to quality health care.
So it's about way more than just telling people to eat their vegetables.
It is. We need to create environments where healthy choices are the easiest choices.
I like that.
So yeah, it's a multi-pronged approach. We need doctors and policymakers and communities and individuals all working together.
It sounds like a huge task.
It is. It's a complex issue. But we need to invest in research and education and support systems if we want to make a real difference.
Right. And speaking of research, you mentioned earlier that we still don't really understand a lot about the specific links between maternal health and all of these neurodevelopmental outcomes.
Yeah.
Where do we need to focus our research efforts?
Well, we know that inflammation, hyperglycemia, and hypoxia could all play a role.
Right.
But there are so many other biological processes that could be involved too.
Like what?
Well, for example, we need to learn more about how maternal obesity and diabetes might affect the gut microbiome.
Hold on, the gut microbiome.
Yeah.
What does that have to do with brain development?
Well, there's more and more research coming out now that suggests that the bacteria that live in our gut actually play a really important role in brain development and how our brains work.
Hmm.
And we know that mom's health can actually affect the baby's gut microbiome. So it's possible that problems with the gut microbiome that are caused by mom's obesity or diabetes could be a factor in these neurodevelopmental issues.
That is fascinating. It's crazy to think that something happening in the gut could impact the brain.
It is. It really shows you how connected everything in our body is.
Right. It's all one big system.
Exactly. And that's just one area where we need more research. We also need to look more into the genetics and epigenetics involved and the long-term impacts of all of these things and whether there are any interventions that might help reduce these risks.
So we're really just starting to understand this whole connection between mom's health and a child's development.
We are. But every new study gets us a little bit closer to understanding this and figuring out how to help kids have the healthiest lives possible.
That's great. So for our listeners who are interested in learning more, what can they do?
There are a lot of great organizations out there doing work on this.
Okay.
Groups like Autism Speaks
Okay.
or the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development. They have a ton of information and resources,
Great.
and they can tell you how to get involved if you want to help.
So do your research, folks. Don't just take our word for it.
That's right.
Dive into these studies and explore all the amazing research out there on child development and health.
Yeah. You never know what you might discover.
And if you find something interesting, let us know.
Please do.
Share your thoughts with us on social media or on our website. We love hearing from you.
We're all in this together. The more we all learn and share, the better we'll be at helping kids have healthy futures.
I love that. We're a community of learners, and by sharing our knowledge and insights, we can all better understand this important issue. Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We've talked a lot about all of these risks associated with maternal health, but let's not forget the big picture. Let's focus on supporting the overall health and well-being of all parents and all children.
That's a really important point. These findings should be empowering, not scary. By understanding all of this, we can make better choices and advocate for policies that support families and communities.
Exactly. Knowledge is power. The more we know about the things that influence child development, the better we'll be at creating a world where all children can thrive and reach their full potential.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, we've learned a lot today.
We have.
But the conversation doesn't stop here. This research raises some really important questions about the connection between parents' health and their kids' development. And it shows that we need more research, more education, and more support.
And it's important to remember that even though these findings show some pretty clear associations, they don't tell us what will happen with any individual child.
Right. This is about understanding risk, not destiny.
Exactly. These studies give us valuable information that can help people make informed decisions and guide future research, and hopefully even lead to interventions that could really make a difference for families.
So instead of getting overwhelmed by all of this, let's use this knowledge to make a difference. Let's support healthy choices and work to create a world where all children have the opportunity to thrive.
I love that.
We'll be back next week with another deep dive into a fascinating topic. We'll see you then.